Welcome back to Q Dads, guys. It's me, Ben, and yes, I'm here today with the top 10 deaths of Squid Game Season 2. I'm not even going to waste any time, I'm just going to dive straight in. The number one is Player 444. Player 444 died during the first game of Red Light, Green Light, which, if you remember, he was the guy that got shot in the leg by one of the operatives, but was still alive. And actually, our main character, Jihan, went back to rescue him, crossing him over that finish line, which was actually a great moment. And in that, it gave us as the viewer a little bit of hope that actually he's going to beat the games and he's going to win. But no, he was taken out by number 11 and killed, and it was just a tragic ending. He deserved to survive. Number two is Player 230, and the one that most people absolutely hated, and that was the guy who called himself Thanos, who ultimately died in a bathroom with a fork in his chin. And do you know what? This character was really annoying straight from the offset. Too much energy for my liking. But the way he ended up going was absolutely brilliant. During a fight scene in the bathroom, trying to confront someone who made him lose all of his cryptocurrency, to then only get stabbed in the chin and the neck by a fork and just bleed to death. It was actually a nice little ending to that player. Number three is Player 380. So Player 380 was actually a bit of a quiet horse and ended up mixing in with Thanos and his little cronies. But in the end, it was during the riot in the sleeping quarters where she actually got stabbed to death. And it was actually a shame to have her end that way. I would have quite liked to have seen this character develop a little bit more and learn more about her and her backstory. But instead, Thanos' crazy, drugged up friend ended up going on a killing rampage and ending her life there and then. And the annoying thing about that scene was actually the friend that watched nearby. Ultimately, he probably caused the death of Player 380, as when he threw that bottle, he caused a bit of a distraction, which then led Player 380 to try and defend herself. And if that hadn't happened, she may have just survived. Or actually, if he'd gone down the beds and helped, that could have prevented her death. Number four is not a player, it's the Triangle Operative. So during one of the fight scenes when the riot happened, this guy to me just stood out. There was a lot of guards obviously being killed during this little scene, which was actually great to see and kind of shifted up the whole episode and series completely. But there was one operative that tried to flee and couldn't quite make it and got shot just before the doors closed, with then the square operative having to step over his body. And yeah, it wasn't the most gruesome death or the most obvious, but for me, I just felt sorry for the guy, so close to escaping, but instead, yeah, he died. Number five is now the guy in the boat. So during this scene, this is where we find out that actually the captain of the boat has been in on it the whole time, and not even just a case of keeping his eyes out or having a bit of a listen to see what's going on and reporting back, but he was fully invested as he killed this man, throwing him overboard. And you got to kind of feel sorry for this guy because he was sick. He'd had a bit too much to drink. He'd had a bit too much to drink and then was vomiting everywhere. So I already felt a little bit sorry for him. And then the captain goes and throws him overboard. And no one deserves that, especially not during a storm as well. He definitely died pretty quick after that. So number six was Player 198. The Player 198 for me was one of the better deaths of the series. And this is the guy, for those of you who can't remember, that wet himself during the games. So he was tied up with four of his teammates, trying to compete in a series of challenges as they hobbled across a racetrack. But then he stumbled upon the game where he had to throw a rock to knock another rock over. And the pressure got to him over and over again. He kept missing and missing. And in a very comedic way, they kept racing to get the rock back and then getting back to the correct line. And even when he did hit it, his foot was over the line. But it was just that moment where he then wet himself and in the end got shot. But not only that, the poor guy was still alive in the coffin. And again, number 11 comes over to finish the job. And for me, that was just the icing on the cake. But what a way to go. So number 7 is player 50, 313 and 238. That's right, 3 people in one go. Now if you cast your mind back to when all the players had to choose rooms depending on the number of people that were advised, there was one time where 3 of these people got into a room and they were 1 short. They were meant to have 4 players, and despite all the people that were outside the room being killed, they thought they'd got away with it. And it was only when 313 sneaked through the door that he realised someone was coming for him. And instead of surviving, they all got slaughtered in that room. And for me, this was kind of a little iconic moment because, again, I kind of thought, oh, have they got away with it? But no, the games master was always watching. And unfortunately, the 3 of them didn't get any further than that. Number 8, player 343. So if you remember, in the same game, player 343 almost survived. And it was only when the front man and player 390 entered the room at the very end in the final round, and player 343 was there, shocked, trying to claim that he was there first. But of course, the front man grabs him, strangles him, and ends up snapping his neck. And that was just no way to go. That guy did not deserve that. They could have easily opened the door, threw him out, and shut it. But instead, they went straight for the kill. And yeah, it was just not a nice way to go, but a very memorable death, which is why it's number 8 on my list. Number 9 is player 390. Yes, it wouldn't be fair to leave him out of the top 10 list because it was the most memorable death of the series. Jihan's best friend throughout it all not only survived because of Jihan, but actually managed to make a few friends in there with his fellow army buddies. And I just really felt sorry for him. Right up until the last moment, he was fighting for what was right. And then the front man walks down the steps after betraying them all and just shooting him in the head. What an unfortunate way to go, but he will be remembered for that moment, and that's why he's made it to the list. But of course, we end the list with number 10, and that is the delivery guy. Now, if you cast your mind back to episode 1, when we see the same guy return from season 1, who is responsible for recruiting these people to the games, finding the biggest lowlives of the city. When he eventually confronted Jihan, they played a game of Russian roulette, and it got intense. And actually, that moment really got me gripped to the series, and I realised that they were going in a different direction to season 1. And there was a moment at the very end when he realised that he had the final bullet, that he was just going to forget about it and kind of go back on his word. But no, he followed through and he shot himself. And for me, that was a great moment. We didn't only get to see him end his life and end his struggles with what he has to deal with all the time, but he was a true man of his word, and for that, he's appreciated, and that's why he makes it to number 10 on my list. So guys, that's it for me. Obviously, I hope you've enjoyed my little breakdown. This is all my opinion, of course, on what I think are the top 10 deaths. So please do let me know in the comments your thoughts, and if there's any that stood out to you that I have missed. So hit me up in the comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And as always, I'll catch you next time with something new.